Alrighty, coming to you live from KubeCon here in Europe, more specifically Amsterdam in the Netherlands or Holland, whichever you choose to call it in English. And I'm here with Mr. Matt Ray of
CubeCost.
KubeCost, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Well, I'd be interested just in the beginning.
Among that, but yeah.
You can say what the heck is KubeCost, and then we're going to talk more about OpenCost,
Yeah.
and then we're going to talk about general impressions of the show, and then I
Sure.
might just throw some curveballs in there just to keep you on your toes.
Okay.
So why don't we start with KubeCost,
Yeah.
and then we'll segue into OpenCost, and we'll wing it from there.
Sure. So my role with CubeCost is I'm the open source community manager for the OpenCost project. OpenCost is a CNCF sandbox project for Kubernetes cloud cost monitoring. So basically what we'd let you do is see the price of everything you have inside your Kubernetes cluster.
Now, are you talking about KubeCost now? Or are you talking about OpenCost?
I'm talking
or
about
both?
OpenCost.
Okay.
All right. And so OpenCost is like the engine for KubeCost.
Okay.
They take KubeCost or they take OpenCost and then add more fun to it. Recommendations, scaling, autoscalers, budgeting, reporting, all the enterprise goodness.
Right.
OpenCost is just straight up monitoring.
Okay. So these are like modules that you get for the that you would add on KubeCost, or how would you?
No. I mean, it's just totally different. You don't build up from OpenCost. It's just like you go get KubeCost instead.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's just a separate product.
But now, are you pulling the code from there? Are you contributing back upstream? How does that work?
Yeah. So OpenCost is the upstream to KubeCost because they consume OpenCost and wrap it with their own stuff.
Okay.
But they're pushing a lot of the patches and code into OpenCost. But one of the cool things that we got to announce this week here at KubeCon was that Microsoft is now a contributing member of the OpenCost community.
Microsoft, I'm not familiar with them.
Well, this little company out of Seattle, they make a thing called DOS.
Yes, I remember it well. So that's actually pretty cool. So Microsoft joined. What was their inspiration or reason for joining? I don't.
Well, I mean, basically, they wanted to make sure that their customers had good visibility into their spend.
Okay.
I mean, a frequent question when I mention Microsoft and Amazon and Google are involved in OpenCost. When I mention that, some people are like, well, why do they want you to save money? don't they want you to just waste your money on their clouds? Well, no, they actually want you to have a good experience. They want you to get the most out of it. They want you to make sure that you're not inefficient in your usage because, if you're wasting money, you're not going to have a good time. You'll have a bad impression. So they wanted to make sure that their users had good visibility into how they were spending money with Kubernetes, with AKS. And, and then they've also contributed some other features. So they literally just showed up, started contributing. I didn't know who they were. And then, after the fact, I was like, oh, those guys are from Microsoft. Yeah.
Wow. And then, so as you said, they made it officially public here.
A big, marketing release, press release and all that fun stuff.
Wow. So, okay. Because obviously, usually when you put a project out, well, not usually, but you start with the people who work at the company who gave the code. And so it sounds like you're actually building a pretty vibrant community here.
Yeah. I mean, so KubeCost is definitely very active in OpenCost, but when they contributed it to the CNCF, they
And that was how long ago?
The OpenCost was announced in June of last year.
Okay. So we're coming up on 1 year. So
Coming up on 1 year.
Yeah. Okay.
We're coming up on 1 year, and KubeCost donated or contributed, their engine of their product, and as well as a specification for this is how you monitor Kubernetes costs, and got a bunch of other companies and users to contribute to that specification and sign off on it. So it's a standard and an implementation of that standard.
That's cool. So now, do you have a technical board, a governance board? Where are you? Because I think it's interesting. I think our listeners and watchers would be interested in knowing how open source projects start, how they usually grow, and some different than others. But what's been your path early on here?
Yeah, that's a good question because as a Cloud Native Computing Foundation project, there are kind of three tiers. There's sandbox, which is where when you enter. So first you have to apply to even join. You don't just say like, boom, I'm in the sandbox. You have to apply, be accepted, and to do that, you have to have, you have to have some other companies involved already.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, show that you have something useful to the greater community.
How rigorous is that application? In other words, is it sort of the gestalt of, you guys look like you're in good place, or do you actually have to say there's a checklist, you need to have this?
It's not very. I mean, they in the keynote this morning, they did talk about the number of projects that are being admitted and their rejection rate and why some of them are rejected. Obviously, we weren't rejected, but projects get rejected because they aren't a good fit for the CNCF, or they don't see a value. You might say like, oh, I'm going to open source this reporting dashboard for my commercial product. Well, that doesn't really move the needle as open source. It needs to be something that is viable and useful without another commercial product next to it. And so OpenCost is very viable, very useful.
Sorry, I think I cut you off and can just cut you off to tell you how I cut you off, but you were saying sandbox, and I think you were going to go to talk about incubation.
Yeah. So we are, you start in the sandbox, once you're accepted, you start in the sandbox, and then, some projects never leave the sandbox. What happens next is you actually have an incubation due diligence. So
Okay.
they have a whole process for.
So that's where you get more rigorous and
and so I'm actually preparing OpenCost for that right now. So I've been collecting metrics about contributors, making sure that we have documented governance, security methods.
Yeah, is there a standard for docs? You don't just have docs, but you have to have them that are helpful and that are understandable. If you can spell docs, that's good enough.
I think you do have to have documentation.
Well
for sure.
handled. Well
handled. But it's basically you need to show good community momentum. So it doesn't, you don't have to be perfect to be incubated. You don't have to be like, oh, we have 10,000 users and
this many lines of code
and this many lines of code, because some projects are simpler than others.
Yep.
And some projects are still dominated by a single vendor. That's not a big problem for incubation as long as lots of people are using it and it's still viable and useful without having to have a relationship with that vendor. And so OpenCost checks all the boxes.
Okay.
Well, I'm totally biased, but I think we're in good shape to get incubated. And then of course you also have to have all these metrics about who's contributing. So we've got like 75 contributors. I think the number that I recorded is like out of the top 30, 8 of them don't work at OpenCost, and that's a good number.
How many? 8?
8.
Okay. And what are they from? Microsoft, Google.
One of our other big contributors is Grafana Labs.
Oh yeah.
So they're a big user of OpenCost, and it's some of them are just random people. I mean not random people. They
they
work
pick them up off this. Hey, you want to work on this Kubernetes cost thing?
Just do some commits. Because they're
write docs. That's what you really need the help with.
Everybody needs help with docs. So that has been a frequent request. Is like hey, the documentation's not great. I'm like. You're looking at it, it's you kind of get pulled a lot of different ways. So,
and that just a small side note. I think that I saw a talk just a little while ago by Kelsey Hightower and talking about business models around open source. And one of the key concepts he was talking about was empathy. So same thing about people saying, hey, where's the documentation? Why isn't it better? It's, hey, realize these guys they're doing the best they can. They're spread thin, so they got to focus on things. And
it's not really fair that open source maintainers don't get more hours in a day.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
That's right. If only they didn't have to sleep and had no families. And
So here I am, far away from my family in Amsterdam.
Yeah. But at least you get to talk to me. So well, there you go.
It's working out all right.
Yeah. So anyway, I cut you off. So you're in the path. You're putting together your case to say, hey, this is why we should go from sandbox to incubation.
Yeah.
And then, is there any specific period of time, or is it?
So right now we're still gathering up. You have to have some adopters. You have to have like some anecdotes about so and so is using it in production, and this company's willing to raise their hand and say oh, we're big fans. So I'm still gathering up a little more references on that, but from there we have a advisor on the technical steering committee he'll give us like a once over and say oh, this is good
from the CNCF technical.
Yeah, well, before we actually formally submit it. So we have we have an advocate in our camp who is like, oh yeah,
it's kind of like your executive sponsor.
Yeah,
something.
Yeah, kind of like our our AA sponsor.
Yeah.
For open source, and then we'll go before the committee, and hopefully knock on wood, by KubeCon North America, Chicago, will be an incubated project.
So you have to go and defend your thesis. Is that the idea in front of the group of 5?
My thesis was longer, but this is taking longer.
But it really rocked, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you were for those in the audience who don't know. Yeah, what was your major?
No. My first undergrad was geology.
Okay, which rocked. That totally
which rocked. Yes, but my master's thesis was on overloaded use of wikis in software development.
That's funny because that was the same thing that I did. Well, it's there's not many of us, and so it's just wacky. We both are here in this booth. I'm lying. Anyway, so. Okay, you're going to defend it, and then beyond that, is that sort of where your sights are? Are you thinking?
Yeah.
Do you have to start putting in place? Okay, when we graduate from there, we need to. We should have this, that, and the other.
Yeah, I mean, we should be able to get to incubation with some flaws. I mean, they're not flaws. They're just we haven't like fleshed everything out.
Opportunities is what we call them.
Yeah, there's opportunities for improvement. And then, graduation is a much higher bar.
Okay.
Graduation, you need to have, core maintainers outside one company. You need to have wide number of contributors. You need to have, strong governance. Right now, it's still heavy on the KubeCost side, but, I like to say that, they're benevolent dictators in the good way. Because, they are continuing to contribute heavily to the project. There are a lot of features that KubeCost has contributed to OpenCost and continue to do so. But we're also getting contributions from Grafana. We're getting contributions from Microsoft. So we're getting better, which is that's what they want to see. They want to see you're making good progress, and the project's going great. We have the booth has been crazy active. Lots of people coming by just to say hi and thanks because they love the project. And so it's been a great conference.
So. To that effect, well, actually, before I get to that question, what about license? Does that play into this? Does the CNCF prefer one? If
they absolutely prefer. So everything has to be Apache licensed.
Okay.
Yeah. So OpenCost completely Apache licensed. Their requirements around documentation to be Creative Commons. The website has to have certain trademarks on it. So there's a lot of like checks to make sure like everything has copyrights have to be assigned to the CNCF.
So is it literally Apache, or could it be another permissive license? Could it be MIT or?
That's a good question. As far as I know, it's just Apache.
Okay.
But it's possible there's some, I'm not 100% sure of that. We've always been Apache, and I can't think of anything not Apache, but that doesn't mean it's
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I got into open source 15 years ago, and that was all GPL, right? That's what it was all about. And then I was away for a while, and I came back, and it's like, whoa, Apache seems to be the no-brainer for most.
Yeah, I mean, Apache is very business friendly in the fact that you get patent protection as a contributor. So nobody can come in and come after you on patents. But also for other businesses who adopt the software, they don't have to share their code. So it makes it easy for people to take your open source and embed it as long as they provide attribution.
Yeah.
So you don't have to share your code, which is kind of the distinction with the GPL copyleft type licenses is when you take something, if you make any changes, you have to share those changes. So Apache, very business friendly. Obviously, there's a lot of businesses here.
Yeah.
And so that tends to be what more people will go for.
And that's going back to that empathy that Kelsey was talking about is, hey, people need to make businesses out of it. just because somebody is maintaining something doesn't mean that they have to do it 24 hours a day, and they offer everything for free. It's kind of like the Chicken Little. No, wait, not Chicken Little. The one about what was the one where who will help me bake the bread? Who will help me cut the wheat? Who will help me plant the thing? And then no one will help, right? But when it's time to eat the bread, everybody wants to. And so, you know, you want to start helping with the planting.
Well, that's a classic problem in open source. Is, you know, you might have the most popular project in the world, and it might be one guy who writes it.
Yeah, and I think you talk about that in your show, the guy in Nebraska or somebody who's the poor guy who's still maintaining.
It's the curl maintainer, you know, that guy.
Yeah. So now if we talk about the problem that OpenCost and KubeCost solves, we've talked about it before. I think that something new comes in, it works. You're trying to figure out how it works. You're not looking at as much as at cost, or you're looking at nowhere near as granularly as you do. And it sounds like the game has been upped. And if you want to use the different thing, like Kubernetes in this case, you need to be able to have a greater insight into what is spending. And then I think, as you mentioned before, then maybe you re-architect if it's not using it right. But so what are I will stop there and let you talk about how we got to where we are as far as looking at costs and tweaking it and where you think it'll go.
Yeah, well, today OpenCost uses the list prices, so we don't read your bill. Which, you know, once you start getting into cloud, there's a lot of savings potential if you negotiate reserved instances or discount rates, or just there's a lot of opportunities to save money by talking to your cloud vendor and agreeing like, hey, I'm going to spend this much, but I want 30% off or whatever. OpenCost doesn't have that concept. We're just taking the list price. Microsoft did. Part of the Microsoft announcement was they now are providing a billing API for OpenCost to consume that has your specific savings built into it, which is kind of awesome. Mm-hmm. But we're not reading your bill today. KubeCost does, and which means you'll get more accurate numbers probably soon. OpenCost will support that too, and we'll just continue to have very, very accurate numbers. It might not be to the cent.
Right.
That's if you're spending $10,000, do you care about it being off 2 or 3 cents? Probably not, but it's really hard to make it match exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, what we allow you to do with that is slice and dice your Kubernetes usage down to the pod level, to the by a label, by however you want to visualize your data. We have all that data for you.
And that's on the client side. By client side, I mean the company's side. You're not putting it into AWS, right? That's their thing. You're using it on your side. So is there a way then you can go back and say, I don't know what negotiating power anybody has if you have to be as a group, but if you look at it, you can do things on your side like re-architecting or doing this or that. But is there any way you can take that back?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. With a used car dealer and say, look, here's what I've learned, and so I need this from you, or I'll go buy it from the other guys.
So there's kind of two things there. The first is KubeCost. The commercial product has recommendations, so it'll come in and say look, you're using the wrong size cluster. You need a smaller cluster, or you need a bigger with cheaper instances, or whatever. It has recommendations that you can automate. So you can actually have it change the size of your cluster to save money, which is kind of cool. And it makes recommendations like, hey, I see these machines have been running for a month. If you're going to run things for a month, you should talk about reserved instances because you'll save money if you leave things up that long. So, KubeCost definitely has a lot of recommendations built in, as well as automation to, implement those things. And then if you have any sort of substantial cloud build, you need to start looking into FinOps. You need to at least be thinking of, having more than one person, more than one team, working on how to save money. Because, if you have a project that's doing something one way and somebody else is doing it another way and somebody else is doing it another way, well, maybe there's some shared savings that we could have if we all, talk to Amazon together. And that's what the FinOps team should be looking at, is opportunities to, gather up all this usage and say, look, if you can get 15%, but if we all go together, we can get 20%,
right.
That kind of stuff.
So, and speaking about FinOps, are you part of is it the FinOps Fund? It's FinOps Foundation is what it's called, right? Are you guys a part of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, OpenCost and KubeCost are both certified FinOps solutions.
Oh.
Yeah. Which means, we help solve part of your FinOps problem. And that makes OpenCost the only CNCF and FinOps project, which is kind of cool.
That's cool.
But we're definitely involved in that. We're involved in some of their standards that they're are working on.
How big a project is that?
So it's.
Or is it a sort of a holding company for?
Okay. I mean, it's a foundation under the Linux Foundation.
Okay.
So
just like CNCF
just like
is a foundation.
Yeah. But the difference is they're really focused on standards and just kind of building up the body of knowledge for the industry. Trying to get people to think about how to talk to how to architect your infrastructure for savings, and how to get your company focused on saving money. And but they are starting to have some actual projects. And so one of the ones that we're getting involved in is called Focus. It's the FinOps Open Cost and Usage Standard.
I bet they re-engineered that, right?
They did.
They started with something, and then they tried to think of umbrella. They went with umbrella for the U, and
it might have been called the Open Billing Standard or something like that.
Which doesn't have that snap.
But what they're trying to do with Focus is get the different cloud vendors standardized on terminology. So something coming from Amazon can be compared to something coming from Google. Because right now they use different terms for different stuff, and maybe if we could get everyone to a common lingua franca, well then I could compare apples to apples, and that's what everybody in FinOps wants. And
I think in the industry in general, and I think that's one of the things that and we could have a whole long conversation about that. But the idea of common language, without that, there is no, you can't compare things. It really holds back growth of industries and concepts. I've seen that in a lot where different things mean different things to different people, and they use different words to mean the same thing.
Absolutely. And of course, between the different cloud vendors, they don't want to use one term because that was somebody else's term first,
right?
And we had to have a different name for the same thing.
It's like analyst firms, right? They've got the
magic quadrant.
And magic quadrant. And other one has the radar. And so.
Yeah, so they're working on that standard, and we will be at the FinOps X conference in June.
Where will that be?
It's in San Diego.
Okay.
And
in California.
The one and only.
No, but there's another San Diego.
I'm sure there is. Yeah. Probably close to Amsterdam.
Just like I once flew from San Jose to San Jose.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't just do a big circle.
I once booked a ticket to the wrong San Jose, but I canceled
and
it.
You found yourself in Costa Rica.
No, I didn't quite make it there. I noticed like 2 or 3 days later, and
halfway there, all the announcements were in Spanish,
and the tickets weren't that different. The pricing.
Oh wow!
Because it was like $300 to go from Austin to San Jose.
And the other thing too is Austin and Boston. If you're not you hear those, and it's like you get on the wrong flight, and there you are in Faneuil Hall. when you really wanted to be down on 6th Street or anyway.
So OpenCost will definitely be working on the Focus specification. I think our intention is to start adopting their terminology and try to provide maybe a reference implementation of Focus soon. So that's something to look forward to. We got a lot of moving pieces in OpenCost, so it's exciting.
So I think we're going to get the hook here. So just very quickly to end with, show any quick impressions of it. How have I been doing? No.
Barton, you're great.
I'll stop it some more.
Wait, no, really great.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. That's what I was looking for.
Okay, no. The conference has been. I heard that this is the largest open source conference in Europe yet.
Yeah. So I definitely can believe that.
Impressive. But yeah, it's 10,000 Kubernetes folks, and it's been impressive. I haven't gotten to go to many talks, but I've talked to a lot of great people. So I can definitely say the hallway expo track has been great.
Yeah, that's myself personally what I go for, and I've been really impressed with that.
Yeah.
People you meet and people you have there. So anyway, Matt Ray, great pleasure to be here and having a talk with you. And we're going to be doing talk tomorrow morning with Mr. Cote.
Yep.
And so stay tuned for that. Just to end with anything you want to, if people are interested in OpenCost, where would you point them?
OpenCost.io is our website.
That sounds like a pretty logical place.
Yep.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, from Amsterdam, we're out.